Okay, so one of the most dreadful events in the life of an electronic musician is, of course, moving, right? Cable management, packing up speakers, music gear is valuable and often quite fragile, so it's pretty stressful. My new final destination isn't quite settled, so I will need to hole up at a temporary location until my new space is built out. So the good news is that I am super grateful that I get to build this new workspace out, and something that I hope to share with you guys very soon. The bad news is that it's going to take a good long time. So this means I may be bouncing around from place to place while working, which means I will need to figure out some things. I will need to have my main Pro Tools Mac Pro rig set up for sure to do all the heavy lifting. It'll be a bit of a pain to set up and the least mobile of them all. I could just totally go mobile with my MacBook Pro UAD Apollo setup. And while this is the most nimble, it does come at a cost. It won't have enough inputs for one, and there's some other irritations. I don't like working on laptops for too long, let alone for months. And my love of DAWless creative workflow makes a laptop-only setup pretty uninspiring. In order for me to figure out what this rig will look like, I kind of need to know what it is that I want. The main function of this rig will be for light audio-video production that I can set up most anywhere indoors. Also, I'd like for this rig to have an element of what I enjoy the most right now, which is creating content as much as possible away from the computer. Finally, I want to be able to capture and generate fresh audio sources. So this means microphones and preamps possibly. Essentially, I want this gear to be able to fit into this tote box right here, right there. Can you see it? Okay. So this should be a fun exercise. Obviously, I will need some type of solution to protect the gear inside the tote, but just for now, I'm gonna pick out the gear. Okay, I can't take everything with me, so I need to make some decisions. I picked out some gear and put them up head to head and see which will stay and which needs to go. All right. Now, you could argue, why even bother with Eurorack modules at all? That seems a bit indulgent for a minimalist setup. But to that, I have to say, Euroracks modules have become such a central part of my creative process that I just have to have it. Not only that, I knew that the 62 HP was not going to cut it. Now, I could have also gone with my bigger 7U rack, but that was too much. In fact, it wouldn't fit in the tote. So the 104 HP it is. It's got great features like this 1U space here, physical IOs, MIDI inputs here that make it truly ideal for a compact, on-the-go Eurorack case that packs a tremendous amount of punch. I haven't quite decided what will ultimately end up into this 104 HP, but that's to be determined. I seriously considered on abandoning the laptop altogether and going completely DAWless with the AKAI MPC. I'm definitely not proficient enough with the AKAI, but maybe this could have been the perfect opportunity to hone my AKAI MPC chops. As tempting as it was for me to make this whole rig revolve around the AKAI MPC, the flexibility of the MacBook Pro just cannot be matched. It's a huge bummer because laptops, while being extremely useful, it can be such a creative killjoy. This whole tote box rig needed an anchor to ground everything, so laptop it has to be. Now, I could take both the laptop and the AKAI, but there was another decision that had to be made. So this tote box is large enough to fit a laptop and an AKAI MPC, so why not just choose both? This way, I could use the laptop to run Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, and my suite of Adobe software, but jump on the AKAI when I need to break up my time away from the laptop. Now, the AKAI MPC2 Live is a tremendous device. Did I mention that it's battery powered and the not too shabby internal speakers? And this slot here allowed me to upgrade the AKAI with a 4TB SSD. So what's wrong? Well, ironically enough, this feature-rich aspect is exactly why I leaned more towards the OCTATRACK. Specifically, I felt that there were too many overlapping features with my laptop. Sure, the AKAI is way more fun to interact with than a laptop, and if I had to just choose one, maybe the AKAI MPC wins that battle amongst the OCTATRACK, the MPC, and the laptop. But the OCTATRACK workflow feels so focused and unique with a satisfying workflow that's definitely not like a laptop. The learning curve is definitely steeper than the AKAI, but that's exactly why I want it. The UAD Apollo seems like a slam dunk winner, especially since I own so many of the UAD plugins, but it wasn't. The Apollo had a lot going for it, obviously. I have access to all my UAD plugins, and it's Thunderbolt 3 bus powered for full mobility. But the Focusrite SCARLET has 4 inputs, which is super nice. And the pre's are pretty good. I often need 4 inputs or more when I'm tracking various audio sources and voiceovers, and the ability to record them as separate tracks is super handy for post-production. The Focusrite does require an external power in the form of a wall wart, which is a bit annoying, but I'm guessing you need that extra power for the 4 phantom power inputs. But in the end, if you had to just choose one, the UAD would have to be it. I've owned a lot of microphones over the years, and I sold a lot of them as well, which I definitely regret. I wish I kept all of them. But the mics that I do own have been super curated, so cutting them was super hard. The Neumann KM184 is my go-to mic for pretty much everything. It's especially good for acoustic sources with rich detail. It's not brittle and thin like some cheaper cardioid condensers. And the stereo matching pair is also really nice to have. The second set of microphones are my Sennheiser wireless lavs, which I'm wearing right now. These are incredible. It is a workhorse. It sounds great as a lav mic with a good balance of off-axis pickup range and isolation. It's super reliable, and that's one of the reasons why top-end audio pros use these above anything else. Finally, the 416 shotgun mic from Sennheiser. This mic is slightly hyped on the treble end than the longer cousin, the MKH80, which I also own. It's also tighter and more neutral, the MKH80, but the 416 here is just smaller and more compact. If you've not used some of these higher end-ish shotgun microphones like the 416 or the MKH80, they are so useful. Its ultra tight pattern allows you to capture sound sources with a ton of side rejection. They are a heck of a lot easier to manipulate in post than if you just grab the standard cardioid mic and try to capture sound sources, especially in less ideal and noisy conditions. So rounding off my accessories, I've got the Arteria Keystep 37 here, my go-to Sennheiser 800Ss. I will be carrying the Rupert Neve Direct Box and some of my woodwinds and a portable recorder, of course. It's going to take some time to get used to this new rig, and I'm sure I'll have to tweak it as I go on further. This was hard and super fun at the same time. Trying to fit this rig in this one box, sort of like your desert island rig. I think the unexpected takeaway that I learned from this exercise was the importance of making your setup become invisible to your creative workflow. I mean, you do have to invest some time to get your setup right and practice with it and work out the kinks, but at the end of the day, the goal is productivity, not tinkering. And as always, I would love to hear from you guys. If you had just one box, what kind of gear would you fill it with? Leave it in the comments below and let's discuss.